Welcome. In the name of God, welcome. God's love stretches wide, ready to embrace all with love. You who are thirsty for the presence of God, welcome. May your thirst be satisfied. You who long for a caring touch, welcome. May you know God's love through the care of this community. In the name of God, welcome all. Let us drink deeply of God's presence and share this grace with one another. Come, let us worship. Well, again, a good morning and a welcome to all of you as we gather here for worship on June 28th, this last Sunday of the month, but also the first Sunday of a new time here at Faith United Methodist Church. My name is Ozanne, and I am delighted to get to know you all. I am appointed as the new senior pastor here at Faith United Methodist Church, and it is my honor and my privilege to be serving alongside all of you as we seek to do God's work in this church and in the world. For those of you who are wanting to get a chance to know a little bit more about me beyond what we experienced here in worship this morning, I invite you to go to the Faith United Methodist Church website. We have a video uplink to a YouTube video that does just a little bit of an intro of myself and my family, gives you a little bit of taste of who we are, but we really look forward to continuing to get to know you in the weeks, the months, and the years to come. I'd also like to start off with a word of thanks, first of all, to Bob, our Staff Pastor Relations Committee Chair, and to all that committee for their work in this transition process. A huge thank you to the staff who has been so helpful in helping to get me settled and answer my questions and get me oriented here. And a big thank you to Pastor Diane for all the work that she did in this time of transition to prepare me to come in here as the pastor. So thank you to all of them for that hard work. Finally, a few things one of the things we're starting out new is we're trying a way to check in and see who's here, because as I look out here at this worship space, I don't see any of you. One of the hardest things for all of us pastors who have been leading this digital and remote worship is we don't know who is on the other side of the glass there, who is watching this service, where you're watching this service. And so we have put together a simple form using the service Google Forms. It's a link to that is also on the church's website. We just ask you at some point during the service, after the service, tomorrow morning, when you finally remember to do it, to go to the website, click on one of those forms, and fill it out and just say who you were, how many people in your family were watching. We have a couple of questions over the next couple of weeks we'll be asking that are my chance to help to get to know you guys all a little more. If I remember from putting the form together the other day, our question for this week is, what is one thing you think I need to know about this church? Maybe it's something you love about this church. Maybe it's just something that you think is so important about this church that you hope I'm aware of it. Maybe it's a fun little detail that you don't think anyone else is going to tell me, but you know I would want to know. Go to the form, fill it out, answer that question if you'd like, but we really would appreciate you letting us know that you're out there, because your presence, of course, is important to God, and God knows that, but your presence is important to us, and we don't know that you're there. So please let us know. There's also a spot there to put any prayer requests down. We'd especially love to hear those so that we can be praying with you. If you want those to be shared, let us know to share them. If you want us to keep them just to the pastors, we'll certainly do that too. Finally, our theme for this week is very fittingly welcome. So now let us start out our service with an act of confession. It may not seem like an obvious place to begin, a time of welcoming, but I want us to start by admitting and acknowledging those places that we have failed to create that sense of welcome that we all thirst and long for in our lives. So would you join me in this act of confession together? Holy God, Jesus taught what it means to welcome, and showed a beautiful and beloved community where there is room for all. For times when we have created our own closed communities, forgive us. For times when we have excluded others because of who they are or what they believe, forgive us. For times when we think that it is our way is better than other ways, forgive us. For times when we don't want to find things in common with or love others who are different from us, forgive us. For times when we have become so comfortable in our lives that we don't want to be uncomfortable by welcoming people who are beyond our doors, forgive us. May we extend the welcome we receive through your Spirit, and may we remember that in the holy act of welcoming others, we welcome you. Amen. And now hear these words of affirmation. We are born in love, and we live in love. Each day the Spirit of love speaks anew and guides in a love that transcends Our scripture reading today comes from the Gospel of Matthew. I'll be using the Common English Bible translation. We're reading from the 10th chapter, the 40th through the 42nd verses. Those who receive you are also receiving me, and those who receive me are receiving the one who sent me. Those who receive a prophet as a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. Those who receive a righteous person as a righteous person will receive a righteous person's reward. I assure you that everybody who gives even a cup of cold water to those little ones, because they are my disciples, will certainly be rewarded. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. And now would you pray with me? O God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight. Take my lips and speak with them. Take our minds and think with them. Take our hearts and set them on fire. Amen. Now, looking at our text for today, while it's not specifically said, the theme that jumps out in these words from Jesus is this idea of welcome. Seems a very fitting text to select to preach from, though it comes from the lectionary. It seems like a very appropriate thing to start up as you welcome a new pastor into this church. And it's a very fitting text to look at as I welcome a new congregation into my care. But I think it's also a critically important text as we are looking at a hurting world that is so in need of love and welcome right now. So what does it mean to give welcome? Now, if I was a great scholar, I could give you what the original Greek words that Matthew would be using to talk about welcome. But the reality is my two worst classes in college were French and Latin. And based on those humbling experiences, I had absolutely no desire in seminary to try and tackle either Greek or Hebrew. I liked my GPA higher and my sense of frustration lower. And so I don't have that wisdom to offer you. But the reality is, I don't think welcome is best defined through some understanding of the Greek word or the English word, because the definition of welcome isn't academic. It comes from the heart. It's a feeling that we have. We know welcome when we experience it. Now, since one of the big experiences going on in my life right now is my new home, I wanted to use that as an example of welcome. Well, I had no real appreciation for this at the time. I've come to see all the structural ways that my new home is very unwelcoming at the moment. So our house is on a corner lot. The address is for County Road H2, the main road that goes by it, and that's where you can see the front door. But to get to the house, you can't get to the house from H2 because there's a fence from when they had a dog. So the yard is fenced in, and so you'd actually have to pull off of H2 onto the side street, and then from the side street, pull into the driveway and get out of the car and go through the gate at the back of the property and walk all the way along the side. And if you wanted to be very formal, you'd go past the side door to the front door in order to get to the house. But there are several barriers along the way that make it unwelcome. I mean, first is this long process of distance that I described to you. There's the fact that there's no front gate, there's no front walk, you're coming from the back. One of the things I didn't really appreciate about the house is there isn't really a number on it. I think there's a small number somewhere on the post box, but really you trust the postman to know that this is the right box to put the mail in. If you're just driving along the street, unless you're counting along, you wouldn't know that that was the address for the house because there's no address on the side of the house. And in fact, both on the side door and the front door, there are the frayed bits of wire where the doorbell has been removed. Unless you just thought it was a technical problem on the outside, when you go into the house, you realize that no, they pulled the whole system out. There is no doorbell in the house. It isn't really built to give a sense of welcome. Now, I don't know the previous resident, and so I don't want to say something about the owner. But the message that it sent to me was not one of welcome. Now, we're slowly making changes to that. We've talked about getting out to the hardware store to get some numbers. We've put in a doorbell system so that if people want to get a hold of us, they can ring the bell so we know they're there. All these little things change that feel of welcome. And like I said, I don't know the intention of the owner, but there's that message the person on the outside. See, one of the things we can't forget about welcoming is it's not just what we intend, but how it's received that matters too. We can intend to be welcoming and fall utterly short. Sadly, for a good example of this, we can look no further than our own beloved denomination and the open hearts, open minds, open doors slogan that was developed maybe 16 years ago. It was a great idea. This was a chance for the church to try and define what it was to be United Methodist, for the larger community to know who we were. And it's a beautiful, aspirational sentiment. Why wouldn't we want to be a church of open hearts, open minds, and open doors? And yet, for so many, that reality has fallen sadly short. We may wish to be a church of open hearts, open minds, and open doors. But for so many in our community, they do not experience us that way. How we intend welcome and how that welcome is experienced are two very different things. Now, a key part of welcoming is trust and vulnerability. Now, when we welcome people into our houses, we're taking a risk. After all, they could trash the place. They could walk off with something. You never know, right? And yet, we take this risk to let them inside, to be close to us. And we welcome each other into our hearts and lives. We take a risk as well. We could get hurt. Often that sense of hurt in the past is what makes it hard for us to think about being welcoming in the future. I know for me personally, this is something that I struggle with. I struggle with trusting. I tend to be a very private individual. As I was contemplating this transition and processing it and everything, one of the things I kind of wondered is, after 5 years with my last congregation, what was it that they really knew about me? Acknowledging that perhaps any real deficit of knowledge on their behalf was not a fault of them for not listening, but me for not sharing. Like many people growing up as a kid, I found opportunities to get picked on. I found ways that people would make fun of or harass me for who I was. And this tended to make me a more guarded and private individual, because the less you know about me, the less you can make fun of me. And that is a legacy that I still struggle with. And yet, if we want genuine relationships with others, we need to be willing to open up. There's another lesson for me, waiting for me in my new house, that kind of wrote my sermon for me in some ways here. You know, the new house, it feels a lot like a great example of a new church or a new pastor. You start with those rose-colored glasses and the excitement of something new. I know how excited I am to be here, and I am sure that you are excited for me to be here too. Or at least I'm going to hope that's the case. But then, the reality sinks in. Yeah, we purchased the house at the end of May, and a week later we took possession of it. And so I came down maybe the weekend before we were going to move in, to do some painting on the house with my dad. And of course, the way everything goes, we got to the house, we were all set to get started painting, and then we realized we left the paint at my parents' house. So I went back to go get the paint, and my dad started on the task of planting some rhubarb that we were transplanting here. So he put the rhubarb in, and he was going to water the rhubarb while I was gone. So that's why, as I was driving back to and from my parents' house, I got the call from him that said, "Yeah, you have a burst pipe." I hadn't even moved into the house. I wasn't even there yet. And already, there were problems. Spoiler alert for you. As a pastor, I have my own hidden burst pipes in my life. After all, I'm not really the second coming of Jesus here, or even Peter or Paul. And by the same token, as amazing as this church is, I'm willing to believe that you have your own burst pipes waiting to be found. The act of welcoming is accepting each other, even though we know there are going to be hidden problems and points of conflict. That is actually what makes the welcome more powerful. The act of welcoming is not a because of act, but an in spite of act. We don't welcome and trust you because you are because there's no reason to be afraid. We welcome and trust you even though there could be a reason to be afraid. That's what makes it powerful. One of the challenges with Jesus is we're not always sure what exactly he means when he's teaching something. Now, this is an okay place to be. After all, that's certainly where the disciples were over and over again in the Scriptures. But for that reason, it's hard to know what is behind these examples that Jesus gives in our text here today. He talks about extending welcome, but uses examples of people who deserve welcome, like prophets and righteous ones. Since many of us are neither prophets nor righteous people, it is not clear how we are supposed to be received. And that's why I think it comes back to this idea of trust. We should receive people as though they might be prophets or righteous ones. We should trust in others and give them a welcome befitting that trust. After all, Jesus welcomed and trusted sinners and treated them with dignity. Are we not called to do the same? So now I want to make it more personal. What does it mean for you to give welcome to others? We are all better and worse at giving welcome in different ways. I mentioned my inability to be open and welcoming when it comes to sharing, but there are other ways I can be welcoming. When I was in college, my parents gifted me with a bread machine for Christmas, and that bread machine became my tool of welcoming. Because in a dorm, there is nothing more wonderful and welcoming than the smell of fresh baked bread. And so I would often bake a loaf of bread while I went off to fencing practice, and then I'd come back from fencing and the loaf would be done, and I could take the loaf out, and I'd have something to eat, and I would have something to offer and to share and to give welcome to those around me who were also hungry. And many of them weren't just hungry for the bread, but for the community as well. What are the actions in your life that are welcoming to others? What are the things that you are good at doing to make others feel safe and at home? We are all different, and those differences are all gifts. What are the gifts that God has given you to extend welcome to people who need it right now? We live in a challenging time for giving and receiving welcome. Some of our traditional venues are closed to us because of COVID-19. We cannot give welcome in our churches or really even in our homes in the ways that we are used to. It's much harder to share a meal with someone and to welcome them in that way. Many of us have noticed that greeting people through a face mask is not the easiest thing to do. You don't know if I'm smiling, you can't understand what I'm saying. It's all so hard. And we all know those people who love to give welcome by hugging people. And it is really hard to hug people from 6 feet away. Our world is full of people, but the thing is, our world is full of people who are hurting right now and need to be welcomed. Protests around the country are reminding us that for 400 years we have been enslaving, abusing, and ignoring members of our community. And they desperately need genuine welcome from us. Isolation because of COVID-19 is highlighting the need that many have to feel connected to community. And now political campaigns continue to divide our nation and create a sense of mistrust that poisons relationships as people feel forced to take sides. We all need a sense of welcome in our lives. That is part of why I love our prayer of confession today. It acknowledges our brokenness and it also offers a solution. The welcome we offer comes from the welcome we have been given by God. None of us deserve God's love and grace in our lives. We didn't earn it, and yet God offered it to us nonetheless. We, in turn, can offer that same grace to others. The grace of God becomes our salvation and the way that we can offer welcome to others as well. So even as we welcome each other into this new relationship as pastor and congregation, let us look to offer welcome to those around us in our community. Everywhere we turn, there are people who are lost and hurting or who feel alone. With the power of the Holy Spirit, let us welcome them and extend to them the love of God that we all have come to know through Jesus Christ. Amen. Well, this is our time of offering. This is the time time where we respond to God's grace and God's love in our lives through our gifts. We don't give so that we get something from God. We give because of what God has already done for us. We give to be a part of God's work in the world. We give our gifts to support the church and the work that this community is doing. We give to support other ministries as well. One of our upcoming ministries we're highlighting right now is our Christmas in July. Our Christmas in July, rather than collecting tangible gifts this year, we're collecting financial gifts to support 2 of our local food shelves. I was just hearing on the radio how great this need is expected to be as we move into the fall. They're expecting numbers exceeding those we experienced in the Great Recession a decade ago. People are hungry and in need. And if you're able to give to support that, know that we in this church want to help you do that. And there's an opportunity to do that online, or you can send your gifts to the church. We're also continuing to open up that opportunity through the annual conference for the Just Love appeal that the bishop has given to support communities around us that are hurting right now. And we invite you to partake in that as well. But I always want to remind you that what we offer is not just those monetary gifts we give. Our lives are a gift to God. Our lives are part of how we can extend God's welcome and God's love to the world. So let us give generously. And now I'd invite you to join me in a prayer for the community. We'll pray through some different needs. We'll enter into a time of silence where I invite you to lift up those prayers that are on your heart, and then we'll close together in the Lord's Prayer. But I really do encourage you to not just lift up those prayers silently today, but if you have prayers you want us to know about, to share them through that online form, contact the church, let us know so that we can be in prayer with you, so that we can extend that community to you during this time. But let us pray. God of courageous love, we come today prepared to serve our neighbors. Help us to keep a clear mind and a firm heart. We pray to hear the promise and call that lives at the heart of your being. We pray to recognize how that same voice lives in us. When we choose the braver path of love, let us know that we live in you. We pray to turn away from worldly riches and root toward inward joy. You, O God, long for a world in which the last shall be first, in which the lowly are cared for. We trust in your vision and long to make it so. And so, God, we lift up to you this day our needs and our prayers. Now we pray as Jesus taught us, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Well, I want to share a few announcements for you. First of all, we are continuing to have a reopening team hard at work looking at ways that we can continue to offer ways to reopen the church and to allow us to experience some form of in-person worship. We know that this is a long process, but the team is continuing to work. One of the things that the team is doing right now is putting out a survey, an attempt to get a sense from what do you look for? What will help you be safe? When are you going to feel ready to gather again as a community in person together? So please look for that information about the survey. Take the time to fill it out. Let us know what you're thinking, because your views and your opinions on this are so important to us. As sort of a side part of this process, we are looking at putting together a couple of outdoor worship services, probably in the parking lot, a chance for us to gather together and get apart in a safe way. That work is ongoing. We're hoping to have some more to announce for you on that soon. So again, stay tuned and look out for information about that. Finally, I'm going to give you one more plug right now. Don't forget at the end of the service here if you haven't already done so, go online, fill out that form. Let us know that you were with us in worship today, because it is a joy to be here with you. And finally, we're continuing to look at ways to help us get to know each other, and we have a couple of Zoom meetings, a chance for you to go online and meet with me, and we'll just have some conversation. We can be safely eating and drinking apart and yet together as we get to know each other. Those Zoom meetings are on July 1st and July 8th. There's been more information about those in the weekly emails, but if you want help on how to get connected to Zoom, how that can be a way that you can get to know me, please give the church a call. We'd love to talk you through that. I would love to be able to use that as a chance to get to know people. We're continuing to explore other methods as well, but this is a great first way to bridge the gap and to start getting to know each other. So please take advantage of that as well. But now let us go forth into the world. Let us take this love of God and this welcome that we have received through Christ, and let us share that love and that welcome with a world in need.